Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, television, books, and popular culture. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to tonight's show. My name is Bruce Markison. Once again, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. Tracy, what is the latest from you?
Oh my goodness. There's so much going on in the world of horror right now. And I'm very close to starting the series Welcome to Derry. So I think there's 6 episodes out now. And I think I'm ready to start it. So I'll be finished before the end of December when I think the series wraps up. Yeah. So that's kind of like, I've heard so many great things about it. So I'm really excited to start watching it. Have you seen any episodes yet?
I have not because I don't have HBO.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
I have a lot of streaming services. I mean, I've got all the free ones like, Tubi and the Roku channel and all that. We've got Amazon Prime. We did have Apple TV. We got rid of that. We have Netflix, but yeah, I don't have HBO.
Oh,
And at this
goodness.
point, I'm too cheap to acquire it. Although I am curious to see that show. Now, having said that, I am planning to spend some money this upcoming weekend because there's a new horror movie that's coming out, and I haven't been hearing a lot about it, but I've been reading up on it a little bit.
Hmm.
It opens up Friday, December 12th. It's got the very odd title, Dust Bunny. Have you heard about this at all?
I have not.
Okay. So this stars Mads Mikkelsen, great actor. He was in the Hannibal TV series on NBC. I think they had 3 seasons back around 2012, 13, that time period. And the director, or the guy who created that series, Brian Fuller, he is directing this Dust Bunny movie, and it's his first feature film effort. It's kind of an interesting story. Mickelson plays a hitman, and he lives in an apartment building. He is next door neighbor to a young girl, Aurora, who claims that her family was killed by a monster under her bed. Kind of a wild story. I don't know that the hitman, played by Mickelson, really believes this, but he is hired by her. She gives him whatever money she has, probably a few dollars, to kill this monster. And I guess he comes to believe that it's actually not a monster, but they might have been assassins that originally were targeting him and somehow got the wrong apartment. At least that's what I've been able to glean. Mickelson's a great actor. He did a very interesting interpretation of Hannibal the Cannibal on that series. And Fuller obviously did a great job coming up with the idea for that show and following through on it.
Mhm.
The show also has David Dastmalchian, a guy that we both like. He was the star of Late Night with the Devil, and he was great in that. And you've also got Sigourney Weaver. So it's got some
Wow.
things going for it. I saw the trailer. It looks kind of wild. It has a different visual look, but might be worth checking out.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's such a great lineup for the cast, Bruce.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. I haven't seen anything on it at all. And I followed David on Instagram, and I don't recall seeing him post anything about it. And if he did, I might have kind of skipped over it by accident. So I'll definitely check it out. It sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe it's just gotten lost in the shuffle. There have been so many horror movies this year that have had a lot of hype before and then after they came out. You go back to last year, the end of last year with Nosferatu. Nosferatu, we were hearing about that for weeks. And then, of course, over the summer, we had movies like Sinners, Weapons. Then we just had Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which we've talked about on this show as well. We've talked about all those movies in depth.
Hmm.
So I don't know, maybe the mainstream media is just sort of horrored out at this point. Maybe they don't think the movie's that great. I don't know, but I've read some fairly positive reviews of it. As always, you get the negative reviews. People say, "Oh, this is the worst horror movie I've ever seen." It always kills me when people say that. They have no sense of history and the lousy horror movies that have been made since the 1930s on. Every decade, you can find clunkers And then when I hear people say, "Oh, this new movie coming out, this is the worst. It's the worst movie I've ever seen." I mean, stop it. Just enough.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't like it, fine, but you can't say that every movie you've seen is the worst ever. You just lose credibility.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like people have this 6 months, like they can't think any further back than 6 months when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. But most of the reviews have been a lot more positive than that.
Yeah.
And they're, I think, more intelligently written. These are fan reviews that I've seen on online, IMDb, that
Right.
sort of thing. So I'm going to go see it because I have a lot of respect for Mickelson and Dust Malchin, and Sigourney Weaver's had a great career. The title is a little weird. I don't know if it's a giant bunny that's under the bed. I'm not sure if there's a rabbit in this or it's some other kind of monster, but I've heard enough good things and I've seen enough in terms of the cast that I'm going to give it a shot when it comes out. So,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, something to look forward to as we lead up to the Christmas holiday. And speaking of that, most of this show is going to be our Christmas showcase. We're going to be talking about two movies that Tracy and I have sort of agreed upon that we wanted to discuss. Tracy gave me a master list, then I picked a couple from that list. Both obviously have connections to Christmas, the Christmas season. First up, we're going to talk about a 2015 film that's not that well known. It's called A Christmas Horror Story. It's an anthology film that features William Shatner. And then later in the program, we're going to take you back to 1984. We're going to talk about the hit movie Gremlins. Josh Hitchens, our frequent guest, contributor here, loves Gremlins. I think it's his favorite Christmas movie, as I remember. And it's become somewhat of a classic over the last 41 years. So we're going to talk about that too. So we are going to get right to it. We're going to begin with A Christmas Horror Story. And Tracy, you will provide us, if you will, the lowdown on this one.
So, A Christmas Horror Story is a 2015 Canadian holiday horror anthology. And believe it or not, this is a movie that I've had on my watch list for a really long time. It's kind of always intrigued me because, it's a festive mashup of mythology and monsters, mayhem. But like you mentioned, William Shatner is in this movie. And, he's surprisingly grounded. He's very charming in a weird way. But the whole idea of him being in a Christmas horror movie, I thought was super cool. So I absolutely needed to check it out. And it was filmed here in Canada, which is another plus. I wanted to see it for that reason too. And it was filmed primarily in like the Toronto, Brampton area. And it's not your typical anthology where you watch one segment, then you move on to the next and the next and the next. All four stories are kind of pieced together and they happen at the same time on Christmas Eve in this little tiny town called Bailey Downs. And if that name rings a bell, it's because it's the exact same town from the movie Ginger Snaps. And ironically, this movie was directed by Brett Sullivan, Grant Harvey, and Steve Hoban. And they all worked on the various Ginger Snaps movies. So that's kind of a really cool connection.
Yeah.
And at the center of this, of course, William Shatner. He plays a local DJ, and his name is Dangerous Dan. So I'm probably going to giggle throughout this, so you'll have to like pardon me. But he holds this whole entire film together from behind the microphone. He's drinking spiked eggnog. He's ranting about the holidays. He plays Christmas music. And he's keeping a really good eye on a very active police scanner that he has there at his desk. So, Dangerous Dan's commentary kind of ties all of these stories together as this little tiny town slowly unravels. He keeps talking about how the police scanner keeps going off with nonstop strange incidents. People are acting weird and absolutely nothing is making sense. And Dangerous Dan, he is hilarious. but he's kind of cynical, and he just steals the show with ever leaving the chair. So I'm going to kind of give you a brief look at some of these stories. The first one is, I call it the school basement ghost story. There's no real names for these little anthologies, but that's kind of what it's about. So there's a trio of teens, and they sneak into their high school to investigate a gruesome murder from the previous year at Christmas time. And it starts out as a documentary style dare that turns into kind of like a possession story with a bleak and tragic end. Then we move on to another piece of the story. It is The Changeling in the Woods. And this one is where a family goes into the woods to cut down a beautiful Christmas tree, but they accidentally bring home something that is definitely not their kid.
Hmm.
So in this segment, it leans really heavy into folklore and plays like a winter kind of fable that just goes all wrong. And next up, we have Krampus and a dysfunctional family. So this story is about our rich but awful family, and they face the wrath of Krampus after their bad behavior reaches like absolute mythic levels. It's kind of like dark comedy, part creature feature, and just be careful what you wish for. That's the kind of tale this segment's about. And then we move on to the last segment, which is Santa versus kind of like zombie elves. So at first glance, it looks like a very campy zombie elves versus Santa Claus splatterfest. And I say splatterfest because it's a splatterfest.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so Santa fights off what are little infected elves at the North Pole. And it ends with one of the most memorable twists in Christmas horror. So it's like absolutely crazy. And so that just kind of highlights these stories. So Bruce, what were your first impressions of this movie?
Okay. Well, before I answer that, I have to say, when I saw your notes for this, I thought these little titles that you gave, I thought these were like the official titles of these stories, but you made them up.
No. Yep,
Okay.
because I looked to see if I could find if there was a listing of the actual like segment titles, and
Yeah.
there was absolutely nothing. It was like it's just here's your story, and I was like, okay, so I just
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
Well, these are pretty good titles you came up with. The School Basement Ghost Story, The Changeling in the Woods, Santa versus Zombie Elves, Krampus versus a Dysfunctional Family. This could be a new career for you where you help movie directors and producers title different segments of their movie. Thought I really thought these were official names for the stories, but they're not.
No, they're
Yeah.
not.
All right, so let me answer your question, Tracy. When I first started watching this, I was really expecting a standard horror anthology. And I thought, boy, there's a lot of stuff going on here at the beginning of the movie. There's kids investigating the school, a family goes to their aunt's mansion, a police officer who discovers the deceased students at the school takes his family tramping through the woods to cut down a Christmas tree. And then this very strange Santa Claus, rather harsh and imposing in appearance, trying to fight off elves who are like demons. And I thought, man, this is only the first story. This sounds like the whole movie in and of itself. And then I realized this is the whole movie in and of itself. I started to understand that, yeah, everything is interconnected. The five storylines could have each been separated out, played by themselves, but because they're happening simultaneously on Christmas Eve in this town, Bailey Downs, they're all actually connected to each other, woven together in a continuous narrative. And I didn't totally understand that when I went in to watch the movie the other night. Once I realized that, and it took me about 20 minutes to understand that, then it became a bit easier for me to follow what was going on. And I think I started to appreciate the film quite a bit better. I think instead of having these separate stories and making it seem like they all happen on their own at different times, I think the directors in doing these stories simultaneously as part of this woven tapestry of stories, I think they're trying to be creative, different. And for the most part, I think their efforts worked. It just took an adjustment for me, at least for me personally. Maybe
Mhm.
other watchers who are a little more advanced would have picked up on it quicker. But once I got used to it, about 20 minutes in, then I started to see that, oh, okay, all right, we've got all these stories going on, and they kind of switch from one to another. But it's all pretty seamless, and the editing was, I thought, very good throughout. So even though I had an initial adjustment problem, if you will, I think I understood what the three directors that you mentioned, what they were trying to accomplish, and I think it worked for the most part. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah. So I was like in the same kind of situation when I first started to watch the movie. I was expecting exactly, here's one story, it finishes, and then on to the next. So it took me a couple minutes to kind of piece together, what exactly was going on. And it was so kind of interesting too, because you had those tiny little connections from the stories that kind of just blended them together, which I thought was really interesting. So,
Yeah. And it's harder to do that. I
mhm,
think when you're doing an anthology film, I'm not saying it's the lazy way out because I don't have the talent to make a film. I don't know how these people do it. It's magic the way these movies come out, especially the way that horror is today, so advanced in a lot of ways. But it's harder. It's harder to create that one continuous story than to do smaller individual stories. I think it is anyway. So they took on that challenge and they handled it well.
yeah, I absolutely agree. It was definitely, it was interesting. And so, just to talk a little bit more about each individual story, a little bit more in depth here. The school basement ghost story. Well, it like it was mentioned earlier, it's about the teens that break into their high school after hours to check out a murder scene from
Mhm.
last Christmas. And they film it like this mini documentary, but it kind of goes a little bit sideways. And for me, I think this was the darkest and the least Christmassy feel type of story.
Mhm.
Um, the whole possession twist kind of really caught me off guard. It wasn't really something I was expecting. It's very creepy. Like it is a creepy story. Just not something I expected. And I didn't feel that this story fit in with the other ones.
Yeah.
To me, this was more like an urban legend feel. Um, yeah, definitely an urban legend for me, more so than a Christmas feel.
Yeah.
And this segment was definitely my least favorite. So, what did you think about this one? Did you like this one?
Well, I think I probably agree with you.
Mhm.
It was certainly different from the others. The only thing that tied it to Christmas is they're investigating murders that took place a year ago, just before the previous Christmas. So that's really the only tie in.
Mhm.
But the story itself, Tracy, was all too familiar. I've seen it in other films, I've seen it in TV series. Kids go back to the site of murders of their classmates. They discover there is some kind of paranormal presence, which I thought probably would have been a ghost. It turned out, as you said, to be a possession. So, in a lot of ways, this was kind of more of the same. We've seen this before, and nothing all that new was done here. The story also was racier than the others. It has a mild sex scene toward the end of it, and it really didn't fit any of the other stories because the other stories are not like that in any way. So I agree. I think this was the weak link of the four. If they could have replaced one of the four stories, this would have been the one. Or maybe if they had done something different, maybe instead of having kids investigate, maybe have adults investigate, maybe the
Mhm.
policeman who initially found the two bodies the previous December, something like that. But the way that they did it, it was fairly weak.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I definitely agree with that one. Um, so the next one, The Changeling in the Woods, this one was pretty good. So it was the family that goes to chop down a Christmas tree on private land, and their son goes missing very briefly. They end up bringing home more than what they bargained for.
Yeah.
And so this was a real heavy folklore type vibe, I felt. And what I really liked about this one is the tension was it was built very slowly. It wasn't a jump scare. There was no real jump scares for me in this one, but it was just really creepy that something is off. So the son that goes missing, he's probably maybe, I don't know, what would you say, like 5 or 6 years old, maybe 7 years old.
Yeah,
Uh,
tops. Probably 5 to 7 in that
yeah.
range. Yeah.
And he is spooky, like super spooky when they bring him back home. Like this kid's behavior, it keeps changing. And the deadpan look on this kid's face was like absolute nightmare fuel. It just his reactions, like that kid deserves an award for his facial reactions
Yeah.
in this segment. I thought it was really pretty good. And what did you think about this one? Was this kind of up your alley?
So before I talk about this one, I just want to make sure I'm clear on something. The father of this family, it's a father, mother, and the young boy that you mentioned.
Hmm.
And the father, he is a policeman. He's the guy who discovered the bodies of the two students the previous year, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. So I like that connection between the first story and the father of this family in the second story.
Hmm.
So he was the first policeman on the scene. He discovers the bodies of these two unfortunate kids. And he's so traumatized by this, he has to go out on leave. And I felt some sympathy for him because, he's trying to watch out for his son. And that's not easy because after they go into the woods, the son stabs him with a fork at the dinner table. He stabs him in the hand. That was the one jump scare for me. It really wasn't a jump scare, but it was a little surprising. Normally at the dinner table, one of the children might scream and yell, but they don't usually jam a fork into the mother or father's hand.
That
That
is
occurs,
true.
that occurs here. So there's obviously something wrong with the kid. And that behavior by the child, that and other behavior causes this father, this policeman, to take some of his anger out on the boy and starts being a little bit abusive. And I'm not defending that, but the guy's been through a lot. First,
Mhm.
witnessing or seeing these two kids that were brutally murdered at the school, and now dealing with a son that I think is troubled to begin with and seems even more troubled after they went into the woods and cut down the tree. Now, the other part of this is interesting. The father commits a little bit of a transgression here. He trespasses on someone else's land and cuts down a tree that didn't belong to him. So I guess that technically is a crime, right?
Yes.
Relatively small. Didn't really deserve to have the punishment of his son being taken over by another being. I mean, that's a little extreme to me. And it's not like the owner, I don't want to give away too much. It's not like the owner of the land is the one putting this curse on this family, if you want to call it that. There's another force that's involved. There's something in the
Mhm.
woods on his land that's supernatural and eerie. And the owner of this land knows that. And he tries to warn the mother. He calls her like in the middle of the night and, because he witnessed them break onto his land.
Mhm.
And he's not really trying to bust them for that. He's trying to warn them that, the kid that you brought back, that may not be, probably is not your son. So, um, whoever is coming up with this punishment, little extreme. All right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have probably cut down trees on land that doesn't belong to them. Not that I've ever done that. We always usually go to a lot and we have a tree that's already cut down. I personally am against going into the forest and cutting down trees with chainsaws. It's too much effort. It's too cold. Just
Yes.
give me a pre-cut tree. Give me something for $75 to $85, and I'll be happy. So anyway, the punishment is a little bit too much for the crime in this case. Now,
Yeah.
the only part of this story that I really didn't like, I think there should have been more of an exploration of the trauma
Hmm.
caused by the father, this policeman, finding these bodies and how that caused him to take a leave of absence from his job.
Yeah.
That's kind of skirted over. That's not really developed the way I think it should have been. And to me, that's part of the story. And it would have made the story more complicated, but I don't think it would have made it, unfathomable or unreasonable. I think it would have been an understandable thing. So
Yeah.
that was the one part of that story that could have been a little bit better. But yeah, it was, the way the son acted, very creepy, going into the woods. The kid disappears for a little bit. Then he comes out of a tree. This tree has a giant hole in it. It's a supernatural tree. Really good special effects, by the way. We haven't really talked about
Yes.
that. I will mention that toward the end. But the tree that we saw here was really pretty cool. Looked like a real tree to me.
Hmm.
And even though it had this giant hole in it and apparently had a different world in it. But overall, I thought that second story, The Changeling, was pretty good. Definitely an improvement over the first story with the kids doing the investigation.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. What I think well, and this is just me, but what I think that they should have done is focus more on the second story with just kind of
Mhm.
like a little bit of the first one and made the second story kind of like the primary focus, with
Yeah.
that first story just being like a little bit of the trivial stuff. I think that would have worked really, really well, because I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, just to, just to kind of figure out
Hmm.
what actually really truly happened and the effect that it had on him as a police officer and his family. And it would have explained some of the second story a bit better too. So, yeah, definitely agree. I'll have to remake that myself maybe.
Yeah.
But we'll move on to the Krampus and the dysfunctional family.
Okay.
So just to recap, the super spoiled, awful family ends up on Krampus's naughty list, and he's not messing around with this family at all. Um, it was interesting to watch them panic to try to survive what was happening to this family. It was, it was tense, and it was really kind of darkly funny at certain points.
Hmm.
I love the Krampus creature. He was
Yeah.
massive. He was terrifying, and the whole family. They were just so ridiculous what they were doing, and the twist at the end is a huge kind of payoff to this story. It's like, again, something that you're not expecting at all. Um, it was a pretty cool story, from the way that it started out to the way that it ended, and I did like this one. This one was pretty good as well. What did you think? It was kind of like dark humor.
Some of that, but frightening too. I have to say, Tracy, this I think was the best of the stories. I
Oh,
really enjoyed
nice.
this. So we have this family. They appear to be wealthy, even though they're really not. They appear to be spoiled, and they are. But their lives are clearly not as good as we were led to believe at the beginning of this story unfolding. And then they go to Aunt Etta's mansion. I love that name, Aunt Etta. And she's very wealthy. They're hoping, or the father is hoping, to inherit the mansion from Aunt Etta. And at this mansion, they encounter this man who at first I thought was Aunt Etta's husband, but he was the butler. Very creepy butler named Gerhardt. And, the look that he gives the son when the son breaks the little Krampus figurine, I mean, that went right through you at that point.
Yeah.
So you could get the sense Gerhardt, not a friendly guy and not a forgiving guy. The makeup effects used to create the Krampus creature I thought were outstanding. That pale white look was very effective. And this actor they picked, he had the build, 6'6", 250 pounds, very muscular, basically doesn't have a shirt on. He's very white. And he has a head that's kind of like a goat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, goat-like head, strong upper body, looks like not only a supernatural creature with obvious strength, but just based on his size and musculature, looks like really an overpowering figure, very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, Tracy, this movie actually came out 2 months before the 2015 version of Krampus, the famous one with Toni Collette and Adam Scott.
Really?
Yeah. So this predates that Krampus movie by about 2 months.
Wow,
Now,
I did not know that.
I don't know if they were able to borrow anything from the Krampus look. I don't remember in the other Krampus movie, I don't remember the figure being so pale, so white, but he was
No.
incredibly huge and
Mhm.
powerful. I don't know if they had enough time to see what happened with this film, given that it came out 2 months earlier. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And even though that's considered the best version of Krampus, and there have been, I
Mhm.
think, more than 12 of these movies now made, but this one, even though it's not specifically about Krampus, this Christmas horror story,
Mhm.
this is one of the more frightening Krampus creatures I've seen on screen. So I thought that was
Oh, yeah.
great. And I think the fact that this came out first and the more famous Krampus movie came out second speaks something to the special effects people. They were more on the cutting edge here. They were first, and they
Yeah.
came up with a pretty good creature in my mind. So I thought this was excellent. The only thing I didn't completely understand, and I don't want to give away the story here, is the ending. The girl goes back to Aunt Etta's mansion
Mm.
and she undergoes a bit of a transformation. I didn't completely follow that. It was certainly a twist. I better not say any more because I don't want to give it away. I guess that was the only part I didn't completely understand. But other than
Mm.
that, I thought this was a great story, the best of the four in my mind.
Yes, no, and I understand exactly what you mean, Bruce, because I wasn't 100% sure how that transformation occurred.
Yeah,
Um, that I it's again, like, it's definitely not something that I was expecting either. Because, you know, don't not to give it away, but I just don't I've never heard of a transformation like that before. So
yeah. What did you think of Aunt Etta? Do you think she was sympathetic or maybe not so much?
No, I don't think she was at all. I think at the end of it though, I think she was absolutely terrified because she
Yeah,
knew that she was on Krampus's naughty list.
right.
So,
Yeah. Well, she did kick the family out pretty quickly.
yes, yeah,
You know,
she
I
wanted
thought they were going to
nothing.
spend the night there, and they're gone after 15 minutes after the Krampus figure's been broken. And, Gerhardt starts to lose it. She was like, oh, all right, get out of here. Go. That's it. Christmas
That's
party's
right.
over.
I
So,
think they probably could have made a whole movie just on that episode too.
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I
Uh,
felt a little sorry for the father because the
yeah.
father, just before he gets killed, confesses to really creating this phony veneer of wealth. He talks about how he's just been paying off debts and he hasn't really been gaining any wealth. They're really not as well off as he's made his wife think they are. So I kind of felt like, he had come to have a little religion here, if you will. He was confessing, realizing his mistakes. He was trying to make things up. And then, of course, a few seconds later, boom, he's out of there. So,
Exactly. So, and the tie-in with this story, so like we mentioned that we started out with the kids in the basement, and then the police officer that was in the changeling was the police officer from the first episode. So in this one, the girl, the daughter in this episode, was actually the girl that presented the keys to the school to give to the kids that are gone to investigate.
Right.
So that's the tie-in for this one. So
Yeah.
this is kind of how it all links together. And then we move on to the final story. And the final one is, let me see, it was the zombies and Santa. So we have Santa fighting off these like zombie kind of elves at the North Pole. And for me, this was so totally over the top. It was really campy. Um, the twist at the end is just absolutely bonkers. Santa in this episode is like an action hero. There's blood, there's gore, and it's definitely Bruce Willis Die Hard type vibes to this episode.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous, but it's amazing at the same time. It's so unusual. You're not going to see it coming. And
Yeah.
I like this one. What did you feel about, like, how did you feel about this one? Was it like super goofy? Was it just too crazy?
Yeah, it was very goofy because it's so not grounded in reality. Not that all the other stories, are, straight and non-supernatural, because they have supernatural elements. I mean, this one is so wacky with, the elves dying suddenly, coming back as ghouls, demons, trying to kill off Santa. All this violence is taking place at the North Pole. It's just such a wild thing. And it really didn't seem to fit the rest of the stories. But you do find out at the end that there is a connection.
Mhm.
So, yeah, definitely very goofy. But I think the revelation at the end really makes the story much better. It makes you look at the earlier scenes with a different eye. It makes it less of a fantasy, more like something that could happen in real life. And we really can't say any more because we don't want to give it away.
Mhm.
And as I said, that ending also connects the story to the town of Bailey Downs, and also in an indirect way to the radio host Dangerous Dan, played by William Shatner. Up until then, I was really wondering how that story was tied into the others, how it was tied into the town, but the twist ending explains it all. And it does work in kind of a sensible way. So I thought that was
Mhm.
good. I thought that was very effective.
Yes. Yep. And it was yeah. I'm just going to say the word Stormin' Norman, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, Stormin' Norman is the weatherman who is referred to by Dangerous Dan at the beginning of the film, and doesn't seem too happy at
No.
Christmas Eve. I think he might have been drinking in the studio too. I can't remember. I know Shatner
Yeah.
was drinking. I'm not sure about Stormin' Norman,
Yeah.
but he gets thrown into the mix as
Yes,
well.
he does. Yes, he does. And, Bruce, I thought this was a really fun movie. And, I found it really hard to kind of pick a favorite segment just because of the way everything was put together. Every story connects in this strange little way, like we've mentioned throughout this episode. And it's just like a chaotic Christmas nightmare.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I think the Santa and the zombie elves was my favorite storyline. Um, just that twist, and it was so wild, and it just pulled everything together. And William Shatner as Dangerous Dan, it just a absolute standout. And overall, I'm going to give A Christmas Horror Story 3 stars. Honestly, it's fun, it's wild, and it's a really fun time if you're in the mood for something different for the holidays. And it is so worth the watch. And it is so not well known and underrated. I would love for more people to see this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I give my final assessment, Tracy, I do want to go back to the Santa Claus story.
Mhm.
And I wanted to mention, when I saw the previews for the film, I could have sworn that Santa was being played by the actor David Harbour from Stranger Things. He
Oh.
kind of looked like him, less hair, a little bit older. But I really thought that's who it was. It's not. It's an actor. I think he's an American actor, George Buza, not particularly well known, but he does a really good job. So it's not David Harbour. It is George Buza. Just an interesting side note. In terms of my review of this, I have similar thoughts to you, Tracy. It's pretty wild effort from the directors, Harvey, Hoban, Sullivan. It's an extremely well-made film, nicely shot, edited, everything goes together seamlessly. Very good music throughout, excellent
Mhm.
makeup effects, especially for Krampus, but also for uh, some of the other characters like the elves, the zombie elves. They were pretty well done too. I'm kind of surprised this movie has not gotten more attention, maybe because it was a Canadian film. I'm just throwing that out there. It's been out for 10 years. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't know about it, and they should. I think if you like Christmas horror, this is definitely worthwhile. Maybe the film could have benefited from having another brand name actor, someone to play off William Shatner. But having said that, the acting was pretty competent across the board, except maybe for the kids in the basement story. They
Yeah.
weren't the greatest, but they're okay. All in all, solidly acted, well made, well presented. And if you do like Christmas horror, this is definitely one you should see. Absolutely. It's solidly good. I'll also go 3 stars for A Christmas Horror Story. So it's a good
Nice.
one. It deserves a little more play than what it's been getting. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to catch our breaths after all the chaos of that first film. And then we'll talk about another chaotic film from 1984, and that will be Gremlins, a real favorite of mine, maybe a favorite of Tracy's as well. We'll find out soon. So we'll take a short break. Back in a moment, right here on the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Stay with us. We are back on the Ghostly Gallery podcast. My name is Bruce Markison, joined by my co-host, Tracy Asteria. And next up on our Christmas showcase for 2025 is a movie that actually did not come out during the holidays, but instead debuted in June of 1984. It was kind of fast-lighted by the studio. And in June of 84, Gremlins made its American film premiere. Gremlins stars Hoyt Axton, better known as a country singer and composer, but he was also an actor. And in this one, he plays Randall, or Rand Peltzer, an inventor who is seeking a Christmas present for his son, Billy, played by young Zach Galligan. Randall visits a store in Chinatown near his hometown of Kingston Falls, and there he tries to convince the owner to buy one of his latest inventions. It's a small travel kit equipped with many gadgets, the infamous bathroom buddy, which I don't think ever hit bookshelves or store shelves. Had some problems with it. He's not able to convince this older Asian man to buy it. Instead, Rand ends up purchasing a strange creature in the store, a creature called a mogwai. And this is a Christmas present for his son, Billy. So Randall names the little creature Gizmo, hands it over to Billy, and he does tell him about the 3 strict rules that the owner's son told him about when buying the creature. Number 1, do not expose the mogwai to light, especially sunlight that could kill it. Number 2, do not let this creature come into contact with water. And number 3, most important of all, do not feed it after midnight. So those are the 3 rules that Billy is told he has to follow. So one night, one of Billy's friends, played by a very young Corey Feldman, accidentally spills water on Gizmo, resulting in Gizmo spawning multiple mogwai, like 5 or 6, and none of whom are quite as gentle and kindly like Gizmo. I mean, at first they're okay, but then after a while, that's going to change. Well, Billy, now forgetting about the rules, continues to expose the mogwai to water And that just results in more of them being created. And that's a decision that's going to lead to absolute disaster. So in a follow-up scene, one of Billy's neighbors, Mr. Futterman, played by the longtime horror actor Dick Miller, he talks about his dislike of foreign-made machinery, especially cars, and how foreigners intentionally install little gremlins into the works to screw up their inner workings. Now, Futterman's words clearly are bigoted, but they are going to prove to be accurate in the sense that they foreshadow what is about to come in Kingston Falls. It has nothing to do with foreigners, it has a lot to do with gremlins. To make matters worse, Billy, not realizing that the clock in his bedroom is not working and is giving him the wrong time, accidentally feeds Gizmo, his primary mogwai, after midnight. So the little mogwai spawned by Gizmo eventually transform into these putrid cocoons. Really disgusting. Billy takes the cocoons to a local scientist. And not long after, these cocoons will hatch at this office of the scientist, unleashing the mogwai as newly formed, mischievous and violent creatures. And all sorts of horrid chaos breaks out during the Christmas holiday as these gremlins, that is what they are now, begin attacking the citizens of Kingston Falls. So that's the basic storyline to this film. I was lucky enough to see it in the theater way back in 1984. Must have been living still in my hometown of Bronxville, New York. I really enjoyed seeing it on the big screen in the theater. I still enjoy it watching it on slightly smaller screens, although TV screens today have become gigantic. So, Tracy, let's get your initial thoughts on Gremlins. What'd you think?
Oh my gosh. So I can't honestly remember if I saw this one when it came out in the theater or if I just saw it on VHS a little bit later when it came out. But I do
Well, you would have
remember.
been about 3, right? There's no way you could have seen this, right?
I would have been 11 years old.
Oh, 11. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Slightly older.
a little
Okay.
bit older. I'm ancient. But, I did go to the theater to see it much later. I'd say maybe about 20, 25 years ago, something like that. It was for a staff Christmas party at a place that I had that it was like for children. So I went to that and I did see it on the big screen at that time. It was wonderful. It was awesome to see something like that in, like, I want to say real life. And I do remember, though, when it came out as a kid, how much I loved the movie, and I loved Gizmo. I thought Gizmo was super cute. I wanted to have one as a pet myself. But I did have one of the Gizmo figurines and that I had gotten for Christmas the year the movie came out. So, I mean, it
Yeah.
was relatively big, like just like a plastic kind of figurine. It was just so cute. I don't know where it is, but yeah, it was adorable. I love the
Yeah.
movie. And it was like so creepy. It was funny. And I just when I was a kid, I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And it is a when I look at it today, because I haven't seen it in so long, it gives me like the, you know, slasher kind of vibes. Like it's kind of gory, but it's funny. It has everything that a good little horror movie that the whole family can watch, really. So I
Yeah.
thought it was really, really interesting. And I was super excited to kind of revisit it so many years later and see if I felt the same way that I did when I was a kid.
So you think it's really held up?
Um, for the most part, it has. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What parts haven't held up?
I think just it's not that it doesn't hold up. I think just when I was a kid, a Gen X kid, it was, like, absolutely hilarious, and as an adult, it's still kind of cute, and it's still kind of funny, but I have to wonder sometimes, like, would today's kids, like, would they go to the theater to see this, and what would they think about it? Just
Mm,
society is so different today, and
yeah.
parents and kids are really different today. Um, what was so cool way back in the day may not be so cool today, but I still think it's pretty cool.
You think some people would be offended by the sheer violence? We're going to get into this more about the rating for the movie. It was rated PG. Some felt it should have been rated R.
Mm,
PG-13 was not yet available, but a lot of people think this movie led to the later adoption of PG-13.
yeah.
I mean, you've got some scenes, that mean old lady, Mrs. Deagle, she goes flying up the stairs on one of those wheelchairs, and it goes right, up to the top floor through the window and crashes, obviously killing her on impact. And then you have Mr. Futterman and his wife. I mean, their house is run over by some sort of a tractor the Gremlins are operating. I wonder if some people, it's funny to say that a movie from the 80s might be offensive today, but maybe this would be. I don't know.
Yeah, it is so hard because, like,
Yeah.
everybody is so different, and, I think different things parents might clutch their pearls as they watch some of this movie with their smaller kids, right? You
Yeah.
just you just don't know, and I think, like, the rating, I definitely like, if it was to be released today, the rating would definitely be higher than a PG or a
Yeah.
PG-13 maybe, just,
Right.
you know maybe no kids under the age of 15, I don't know, just yeah,
Yeah. That's a good point.
yeah.
So here's some background information on the film. This is interesting. In the Cantonese language, the word mogwai, Mogwai, translates to mean devil or gremlin in English. So that term mogwai, that's not made up. It is from Cantonese language, and it has a connection of the title of the movie. So that's very fitting for the film. Accurate. Also, interesting, the set used to portray the town of Kingston Falls is the same set that would be used for Back to the Future, which would come out 1 year later. So if you've seen Back to the Future, and who hasn't, that's not a horror movie, but it's one of the great sci-fi movies of all time. I think most Americans have
Mhm.
seen it, at least of a certain age group. And that town in that movie is the same town. I don't think they called it Kingston Falls in Back to the Future, but it is the same town, the same sets, the exteriors, that sort of thing. Also, Gremlins became a huge box office hit. And this was much to the pleasant surprise of the accomplished director, Joe Dante. Here's what he said: "I still have no idea why this picture was successful. Not that he's trashing his own movie. I'm sure he thought it was pretty good. He just didn't think it would be such a hit. And it made $148 million domestically on a budget of only $11 million. So according to these numbers, this film made over $130 million profit.
Wow.
And the gross was pretty good too. It's the fourth largest grossing film of 1984. I'm guessing Back to the Future. Well, no, that came out a year later.
Mhm.
There was, I believe, Ghostbusters. I believe came out right around this same time. So Ghostbusters had to be a little bit higher, but Gremlins did really well. Fourth largest grossing film of 84. Now, getting back to this whole rating thing, many theater goers saw the PG rating, and they went into the theater expecting this was going to be a warmer, more cuddly film, cute-looking gremlins, and they were shocked by the violent content. They had anticipated a film that was more comical than what was presented. And while Gremlins does have its humorous moments, it really is a dark comedy. And more than 50% of the movie is a horror film with disturbing overtones. And that caught a lot of people by surprise. I'm not sure if maybe the trailers were a little deceptive or the descriptions people read in the newspapers, but a lot of people were fooled by that. And as I said earlier, and as you said, in retrospect, this probably should have been rated R. But if that had happened, that would have had a negative effect on the box office numbers. So Joe Dante and the studio executives, they were probably happy to go with the PG rating. Again, PG-13 would come around a little bit later. So Tracy, what did you think of the level of violence in the film? There's quite a bit. There's a scene where one of the gremlins is put into a microwave. It explodes. I mentioned the scene with Mrs. Deagle. I mean, there's some brutal stuff here. Too much for you, or was it just enough?
I thought it was just enough. I thought it was perfect. And it was interesting because like I did do a little bit of research and I did discover that the PG-13 wasn't available at that time. I didn't know that that rating didn't exist up until I think it was not long after this movie came out. I think this movie was one of the ones that prompted the people that rate the movies to increase that rating. But honestly, though, as a kid of the 80s, I thought the level of violence and gore was totally acceptable. I thought it was fun. It was gross. And so many of those scenes I thought they were hysterical with those little evil gremlin creatures. The scene at the bar, the scenes with Billy's mother, um, the microwave scene, absolutely. But I think the one that cracked me up the most, and I just die laughing, is the diabolical scene with Ruby Deagle on that little stair glider, headed up those stairs. I roar, and I couldn't stop laughing when I watched it last night. That poor lady, she was transported up those stairs so fast, and she was just launched right out that window. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God. But, that stuff was funny as a kid, and honestly, I think when I was a kid watching it, I never associated this as a horror movie at all. And,
Right.
again, no, I was like, I would have been about 12 years old. I never thought it was a horror movie. It was just like this crazy kids movie that I got a chance to see. And, the world's a different place today. I have no idea how kids would react. I couldn't get my two kids to watch this with me last night. So I don't even have their impression. But yeah, I thought it was absolutely acceptable.
Yeah. Why wouldn't they watch it? They thought it was too violent, or they just thought, this is an old movie. This doesn't fit our tastes.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Okay.
They just thought, oh my God, an 80s movie. Are you insane?
Yeah.
They went to go play their video games. They had no interest. And I'm like, you don't know what you're missing, children. You
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know how many younger viewers we get, but my advice to them is do not discount films just because of their time period.
Yes,
I was
absolutely.
born in 1965. I first became interested in horror in the 1970s. I loved the Universal classics from the 30s and the 40s. I loved the Hammer films that were preeminent in the late 50s, the 60s, before I could start watching them. Don't just limit yourself to the movies of your lifetime. There's a lot of good stuff that came before. It's different. Maybe you won't like it as much, but some of them you may be surprised by just how good they are. And I certainly have that feeling.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
That's good advice, Bruce. Like really, and I mean, I'm learning that too because I'm exploring a lot of the much older movies and even different genres of horror that I never would have watched before. And it's just kind of like opening yourself up to everything that's out there, right? And I think kids today, they should learn to explore some of that. Maybe not even in just the horror genre, but
right.
older movies in particular. Like a lot of them are just epic. They're so good, so well done for the times.
Yeah. And don't think for a moment that the directors of today aren't borrowing from these old time films and these old time directors and are learning from what they did. Hitchcock is a huge
Mm,
influence.
mhm.
Uh, uh, Brian De Palma is another guy, influential style, George Romero, Wes Craven, they're mostly gone now, unfortunately. We still have John Carpenter, although he hasn't been active making films. These guys knew what they were doing, and to ignore what they did, not to learn from them is just, it's a foolish mistake.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the movie. One of the most controversial parts of the film, Tracy, involves the story that Phoebe Cates' character, Kate, tells about why she doesn't like Christmas. It's a tragic story. She's a small child, small girl. Her father decides to dress up like Santa Claus Christmas Eve, wants to climb down the chimney and deliver presents to a surprise family. He thinks, this is going to make their Christmas. And instead, what happens is horrible. He ends up slipping in the chimney. He breaks his neck. He dies. His body is discovered, I think, either later in the day or maybe on Christmas Day, as I'm trying to remember.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what their Christmas gift has turned into for this family. So it's no wonder that Kate has no love for Christmas. And Billy is puzzled by that. As Billy is, trying to make the moves on Kate, become more friendly with her, he knows she is resistant to liking Christmas. And at this point, when she tells this story, he understands that. Now, the studio executives at Warner Brothers, which produced this, they wanted this so-called Santa speech removed on the grounds that it was ambiguous as to whether it was supposed to be funny or sad. Now, I watched this. I've seen it several times. To me, it's clearly a sad story, but that doesn't make it out of place. Steven Spielberg, executive producer on this film, he didn't really like the scene either. But being a fellow movie director, he didn't want to overrule Joe Dante. He felt this is Dante's movie. He should be allowed to make it as he chooses. So Spielberg showed respect for Dante and said, if he wants it in, leave it in. That's what they did. And Dante felt the scene was important because this movie represented both horror and comedy. It's a mix of the two over and over again. And I agree. I think the scene is impactful because it shows how many people find the Christmas holidays difficult, especially people who have had to deal with a family tragedy over the past year, or maybe they had some kind of a tragedy that occurred in a past Christmas season on a Christmas Eve or a Christmas Day. And it always brings back those bad memories. And I thought the way Phoebe Cates delivered this speech, if you will, about her father trying to be Santa Claus, very poignant, very sincere, very well done. I think it was important to keep it in the movie. I'm curious, what do you think? Should they have taken it out or should they have kept it in?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I didn't even remember this scene at all until I watched this movie. Like, I have no recollection of seeing that scene the first time. But watching as an adult and seeing it last night, I kind of did a little bit of a double take, and I thought it was a little odd to put into this movie, but
Mm-hmm.
older grown-ups would kind of like get it and understand that Christmas isn't happy for everybody, and it can be dreadful for many people for just a multitude of reasons. And the scene meant something to Joe Dante, and to have it in there, and it definitely should never ever be removed. Um, it's a very sad scene, absolutely, but I found it kind of perplexing at the same time. Um, just, I guess, just the concept of a grown man trying to climb down the chimney in a Santa suit. Yes, it would make great memories for his daughter, but like common sense would kick in.
Yeah.
I would think, because just to realize that you probably are going to get stuck and it's unsafe. And I don't even know, Bruce, if it would actually even be doable. Um, I think like they could have maybe used a different kind of a story to tell. I don't know. Just as an adult, it was odd and it's terrible.
Yeah.
I think about that scene a lot since I saw it last night, and I just wonder, Like, how legit is that scenario, and has anyone ever done it before? Um, Great concept. I don't know. I think they could have used a little bit of a different story just to kind of
Okay.
submit the tragedy, I guess, of Christmas. But for the movie, it worked. Like, it worked, and I think
Yeah.
it's good that they kept it in there. Absolutely.
All right, that's a fair assessment. We should make clear that anybody contemplating doing this should not do it. I mean,
Mhm.
unless your chimney has steps in it, which I don't think they make them that way, and unless it's really wide that it can fit, a big man. I'm assuming the father was a pretty big man.
Mhm.
It's not a safe thing to do. Absolutely not.
Oh, no.
Especially if he tried to go head first.
Oh my
That
gosh.
that would have been even more dangerous. So,
Yeah.
not advisable to try it. I do understand what the father was apparently trying to do. He wanted to give the family this big surprise. If he'd pulled it off, it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
If I tried a stunt like this, my wife Sue would have just taken me to the woodshed and made me sleep out there as well. But yeah, not an advisable trick to try.
No.
All right, we have a disagreement on that, but reasonable arguments, I think, on both sides. Another strength of this film, what makes this such a good movie, the special effects are really good. This is mid 1980s.
Yep.
This is before CGI. So they used animatronics for the creatures. And these, I guess they were battery operated, something like that. They're like animatronic puppets. And they're so good that they make these small mogwai turned gremlins quite frightening. Even when sometimes you see how cheesy a special effect or a makeup effect is, you don't hear. They're frightening, and it's really well done. So that part is really good. The strength also is the cast. So we've got Phoebe Cates. Let's face it, every boy in America was in love with Phoebe Cates in 1984. The only exception was me because I realized I had no chance with her and I had to move on to someone else. Well, that's actually not totally true, but everybody was in love with Phoebe Cates. She was actually coming off the what's the summer movie? It's escaping me now that came out like a year or two earlier. Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's some nudity in that film, and I guess some of the producers were reluctant to put Phoebe Cates in this, but Joe Dante said she's wholesome enough for me. We're going to go with Phoebe Cates, and I think that was probably a good decision. Funny scene when she's in the bar and she's trying to serve the gremlins to keep them at bay. And then one of the gremlins is wearing a trench coat and flashes her. I mean, that's just a classic moment in the film.
Yeah.
Other people, we mentioned Dick Miller, who played Mr. Futterman, longtime horror actor, great character actor. Polly Holliday is the mean-spirited Mrs. Deagle. Polly Holliday played Flo on the TV series Alice. Very funny in that. We have very young Judge Reinhold, relatively small role, but he's an obnoxious banker. And then, interestingly, we've got the voice work of Howie Mandel as Gizmo. So this mix of actors, they portray combination of likable, unlikable characters. But at the same time, the likable characters, they have their flaws. Principally, their inability to follow the damn rules, which they don't do over and over again. So all of these actors perform their roles well. And I should mention, so does Zach Galligan. He was relatively unknown at the time, but he delivers a likable performance, even though he's somewhat naive as young Billy. So I thought they were all good. I think Gremlins does a really good job capturing small town life in America in the 1980s. I grew up in a small town similar to the fictional Kingston Falls, Bronxville, New York. And in watching this movie, that's how I remember suburban life in the 1980s. I thought they captured it beautifully. It's also a very creative story, pretty wild in terms of the level of imagination, and then nicely balanced between the comedic elements and the horror aspects. It's an outstanding film. I think it holds up as a classic. I'll give 3.5 stars for 1984's Gremlins. It's at the top of my Christmas list without question, and really go beyond Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is probably a top 40 horror movie of all time. Tracy, what's your final review of Gremlins?
Oh, I loved this movie as a kid, and, Gizmo was just the cutest. You mentioned earlier when we first started this segment about how parents might have been misled about the movie. And it's absolutely the sweetness and the cuteness of seeing that furry little gizmo creature. And I think that's what parents would have focused on when they took their
Yeah.
kids to see this. And every kid wanted a gizmo. I wanted one. Um, I thought, Stripe and the other gremlins, they were just they were so funny. The scenes, the microwave, just a riot. And as an adult, I still love this movie. A great Christmas watch. The visual effects, I love them. They're still amazing.
Yeah.
Great storyline. Like the acting was really good.
How about the movie theater scene when they're swaying back and forth and they're singing? I mean, that must have taken a great coordination to do that.
I can't even imagine like the crew. And it's the same way with like a lot of these movies. The crew are just so talented. I have no idea how they do some of these effects, like practical effects. CGI did not exist at that time. AI did not exist at that time. Just the imagination and the talent, just phenomenal. It just phenomenal. Um, but yeah, everything was good. And it was so weird. Well, not weird, kind of cool, interesting to see Corey Feldman so young. Even though he was only in it for a couple of minutes, it was just odd to see him so young because I'm so used to seeing him like today on his music videos or TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
But another thing is I loved revisiting with Polly Holiday as Mrs. Deagle. Man, I used to love the show Alice when I was a kid. I'd watch it on reruns after school or during lunchtime or whatever. And I loved Flo. I thought she was just so hilarious. And to see her, because I totally forgot she was in this movie. She was kind of like mean, but I loved her and just her launching out that window. It was, I'll never forget it. Just hilarious. But it's a great 80s movie. It's a classic, and I gave it 3. And I think everyone needs to see this. Like, go back and watch it for the first time. There's nothing better than seeing this one for the first time. I think that's the magic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, it was great. It really was. And I wish, I don't know how many kids today have seen this one, but they should see it.
All right. So you go 3 stars for Gremlins. I go a little higher at 3.5. And we both gave 3 stars to A Christmas Horror Story. So that pretty much puts a wrap on our Christmas showcase for December of 2025. We've had a lot of fun talking about these films. We also want to remind folks, if you watch our YouTube videos, you can also listen the audio versions on Podbean. But if you want to see what Tracy and I look like, that's really important. Watch our YouTube videos. They become pretty popular. Make sure to like the videos if you do like them, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the Ghostly Gallery podcast. Also share with your friends. Tracy, great job. A lot of fun talking about these movies. This was a blast.
Yes, and thank you. It was so much fun, and I was glad to see these movies. So thank you. Now I'm in the holiday spirit, and I'm going to start digging into a bunch of other Christmas horror, and I have to watch Christmas Vacation. That's an annual tradition. So that I might be watching that a little bit later today. So lots of
And
fun.
when the squirrel runs through the house, that is a little bit of Christmas horror there as well. So
Yes, it is. And don't forget about the fried cat, the electrified cat.
yes. Fried kitty cat, as Cousin Eddie would say.
That's yeah, that's his
One of the
mildest line.
one of the great characters in comedy history.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Tracy. We thank all of our listeners and viewers as well. We hope you've had a good time joining us in this Museum of the Macabre. And we do hope we'll see you again next time right here in the Ghostly Gallery.